I think the penny's starting to drop, even for the participants of this space fraud, as these so called astronauts now and their performances are getting less and less convincing as the general public wakes up to this lie. Putting aside all the misrepresentations, the straw man, the maps, the models that have been created out there just to be attacked, putting aside all that nonsense, putting aside all the shady characters that accompany that, stripping this subject bare and simply standing by physical, demonstrable reality, the general public is starting to cotton on now. And as a result, like I said, the space performances are getting less and less convincing as the penny drops with these so-called astronauts, as the bigger picture of what they're part of. And of course, knowing now that the general public have cottoned on. The game is up. I mean, for this to be true, you need a globe Earth. For that to be true, physical, demonstrable reality needs to be wrong. It's not, is it? So already we know this is nonsense, because for this to be true, they need to be doing ludicrous speeds in free fall around a ball. No one doubts an observation in the sky. I've seen it myself. But it's obviously not these unconvincing characters on our screen in a space station hurtling around a ball. Is it?
I know Jeanette already mentioned kind of some of the difficulties of doing science in space as far as everything floating away from you. And I think when you talk to an average person about science, an image of tubes and beakers and lab coats may come to mind. So aside from those difficulties, or maybe with those challenges, what does science look like on the space station? Can you?
I can answer that one for you, young lady. It's not actually science. It's more in the sort of leaning towards performing arts. Different types of performances. But I kind of categorize it ultimately as pantomime. Silly hairstyles, daft costumes, over the top performances, unconvincing, of course, targeted at a naive, gullible audience and children. I'm surprised the performances were allowed to go on this long, and I'm surprised it took this long for the general public to start waking up to this lie. But that's what all the strawman maps and models and the shady characters are there for.
Talk a little bit about the facilities that you've worked with, kind of how you've worked around some of those challenges.
Yeah, tell us about the science.
Well, I could start. Everyone could add things. Being up here is all about zero-G stuff management, and that.
Hate to break it to you there, bud, but you need a globe Earth for that to be a case, and a space station to be hurtling round it to create that environment. You haven't got one of those, have you? Because every air pressure system residing next to a vacuum requires solid separation. So we already know the game's up, and you're part of something that's rather naughty, aren't you, mate?
Goes whether you're exercising or brushing your teeth or eating your food or conducting the experiments we do. And you really have to develop those chops to be successful at any.
We're talking about science, we get stories, and we've already got the performing arts section in the back here up and running. I'm surprised our friend here on the right hasn't got the fuzzy wuzzies going on with the hairspray, but hey.
These, use your imagination. And so that's kind of the lens that we look at all of the science that comes our way. I'll use SpaceX 30 as an example. That was kind of a tidal wave of science when we'd only been up here for a couple of weeks or so. And that, in a way, kind of hit us like a ton of bricks because it was very diverse.
A tidal wave of science that hit you like a ton of bricks. And in a way, it was kind of diverse. Mate, we know this is horseshit before we've even entertained this, but you're making it easy. What makes it even easier now is the fact the general public can see through this now. But where's the demos? Where's the 24-hour live cameras inside the space station in this world of live fly-on-the-wall documentaries? You'd literally get the space nerds salivating top to tail, and it would be fascinating to watch. The reason we haven't watched that is because all of this is nonsense. You couldn't do your circus tricks in harnesses and use all the other techniques you use 24/7. You wouldn't be able to do it. That's why we just get silly clips like this. And even your target audience is now waking up to this nonsense.
And the techniques you needed for each experiment were very different. And we were doing these for the first time, and some of these experiments were being done for the first time. So your brain is all over the map. You're trying very hard to get it right. You know that these experiments are years and millions of dollars in the making, and you've got a very excited but anxious investigator or payload developer on the other end. And so you're doing your best to use your zero-G chops to make these things work. And you may be working fluid or
Waffle, 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 blah, blah, blah. Mate, what have you got yourself into?
combustion or 3D printing or DNA sequencing or metagenomic analysis. And at the end of the day, you're just whooped, but hopefully giddy with success. So that's kind of what I think about when I think about that science search. There's nothing better than having a really excited investigator on the other end who's really happy with what you've done. But we work pretty hard to make that happen.
You certainly waffled very hard, told plenty of stories, didn't really get much real science as such. But your faces kind of gave it away, and you're trying to reconfirm your stories of zero-G, and your mate in the background there going into circus mode as soon as you talked about science, but we didn't really get any real science. We just got circus tricks. Unconvincing ones. As like I said, the penny is starting to drop. Maybe like a ton of bricks in a non-weightless environment, the one you're in. Dear, oh dear.